Private Ned Gillen, Camp Fulton, Kansas, March 14, 1918. Dear Jinx, thanks for your letter. We're shipping out soon. Troops already over there will be whooping and hollering to see us replacements show up. Heck, Holler and me are in the same regiment. Guess they figured the Manifest Championship track team should stay together. Soon as we send O'Hine back to Germany, the other guys from the Manifest class of 18 plan to meet up at the Eiffel Tower with us a drink and a toast. Tell Pearl Ann and the other girls not to be jealous of the Bellomy-Ezells. Their Bond boys in uniforms will be home in time to take them to their homecoming dance in the fall. And tell Velma T thanks for the relief parcels she sent. There's some kind of bug going around that's waylaid half the camp with aches, fever, and chills. It started a few days ago when one guy reported to the infirmary before breakfast, and today there are 500 in makeshift beds all over the place. I've been taking an assortment of Velma T's home remedies after my 17th trip to the latrine. I figured most of her elixir are laxatives, but so far I'm holding up better than most. All for now. Next time you hear from me, it'll be on some fancy perfumed paper from over there. Ichheim von Wüten. I have stinky feet. Ned. P.S. We told Heck that means put down your weapon. And of course that was German. Hattie Mae's News Auxiliary, May 30th, 1910. The recent ceremony for the senior class of 1918 was a momentous occasion and certainly brought back fond memories of my own graduation last year. However, by all accounts, this year's event was bittersweet, as some of the class members were not present. You may recall all the recent Bond voyage celebration for the Army recruits from the Manifest class of 1918. It was a moving event as we said goodbye, though only for a time, to our brave lads. I thought it fitting to name them here along with some of their activities. Luther Heck Carlson, Track and Field, Glee Club. Ivan Holler Carson, Track and Field, Class Treasurer. Lance Devlin, Track and Field, Football. Ned Gillen, Track and Field, Senior Play. Douglas Hamilton, Booster Staff. Having bid a fond farewell to our boys in arms, now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country. That means you, ladies. The Daughters of the American Revolution will be sponsoring a blanket drive, a bake sale, a letter-writing campaign, and much more. Thanks to Pearl Ann Locking for organizing the effort before she heads off to college. Miss Velma T. Harkrotter was going to enlist the aid of her chemistry class in mixing up some of her good-for-what-ails-you elixir. Seems the need is great at Camp Fulton, as many of the soldiers are still battling the flu. Unfortunately, she is having to produce her elixir at home due to another freak mishap which resulted in her classroom windows being blown out. But thanks, everyone, for your support. And for those of you who requested a printing of the special send-off cheer, it is here as follows. Off to war and don't be late. Here comes the boys of 1918. Special thanks to Margaret Evans, Senior Class President, for writing the class cheer, which I have adapted here. Permission granted for printing. For all the who's, whats, whys, whens, and wheres, both here and abroad, refer to the Manifest Herald. We've got the sources we don't even know about. Hattie Mae Harper, reporter about town. Old St. Jack's, lumbago liniment. Don't moan about the ache in your back. Rub it out with Old St. Jack. Back hurt you? Can't straighten up without feeling sudden pains? Sharp aches and twinges? That lumbago or sciatica or what is maybe what getting you down. But whatever the case, Old St. Jack's is the liniment for you. Just have the little missus rub the ointment on your back, and blessed relief will come your way. The ointment leaves a slight discoloration on the skin, but this gives a hearty glow, and it can be used on the face as well. Don't wait. Get your trial bottle of Old St. Jack's at your local hardware store next to the varnish. Miss Sadie's Divining Parlor, June 13th, 1936. The next day was hot. I wasn't sure how those worms were going to be happy with their new place, but they wiggled their way into that dry dirt like it was home sweet home. I figured they'd have to go down deep to reach water, so they'd come up on the other side of the world. Miss Sadie seemed in a dark mood that morning. Today you make rows, not too deep, not too wide. Dig. Her leg was red and swollen, so even her rocking on the back porch made her grit her teeth. And her bark made me grit mine. Still, I'd been working up the nerve to ask her what curse she'd laid on Miss Larkin was. The one that had left the country appraiser's wife in a tizzy. Letty and Ruth Ann weren't going to let it go until I found out. Ma'am? I stammered, not sure if she'd mind my having figured out she was the Hungarian woman in the story. Miss Sadie kept rocking. That curse you popped on Miss Larkin. Curse, she scoffed. You believe everything that is told to you. Curses, spies. I jumped at the mention of spies. How did she know about that? I'd never even mentioned the rattler to her. She may not have a bead on the future, but Miss Sadie surely had a second sight when it came to the present. The only curse that woman bore was her own ignorance, Miss Sadie huffed. What exactly did you say to her? Ava gracia Buddha noche mo. I cringed as she repeated the phrase. It is gypsy. It means, may your life be as long as the hair on your chin. And if you do not get busy, I will put an equally devastating curse on you. I couldn't help grinning as I took up my shovel. Digging a square of dirt, then pitching it to the side, I'd hoped Miss Sadie's mood had lightened. It hadn't. No, she scolded. You shovel like a desno, a pig. You cannot toss the ground aside like an old rag. Then it will not help you later. Use a hole there by the shed. What kind of demon woman is she? I wondered as I gripped the hole, scooping the dirt to one side and then the other, making a gully in the middle. That made me a bit cantankerous, because crazy as she was, I could see the sense in making a neat roll of ground piled on each side to keep the moisture from running off if the rain ever came. But time wore on, and as the dirt mingled with the sweat on my body, I felt strangely comforted by the chunk, chunk, chunk of the hole digging into the ground. I let the rhythm of it take me back to a dusty ride on a freight car with Gideon, the two of us listening to the chunk, chunk, chunk of the track joints, lost in our own thoughts. I continued with my list of what I knew about Gideon. He could start a campfire quicker than most. He always let out a contented breath after the first sip of coffee, and he liked to flip flapjacks high into the air. I smiled at the thought, but a worried frown took over as I wondered what Gideon was doing right then. Maybe unloading 20-pound sacks of flour from a boxcar? What if he had been let go from his railroad job? Was he sidling his way into a diner, offering to work for food? He'd know that the man behind the cash box would turn him down, but on a good day, a man eating at the counter might buy him a sandwich or a cup of coffee. It always helped to have a little girl in tow. He needed me. Or so I thought. What had changed? If there was ever a part of Gideon's life that needed divining, it was this. Why had he sent me away? As Miss Sadie liked to say, I'd have to dig deep. Or I thought so. What had changed? It had only been a scratch. It had only been a scratch on my leg the day Gideon had started turning on himself. It was April 12th. I remembered because it was Easter and the day after my 12th birthday, just 2 months earlier. We were in Shreveport, Louisiana. The Shreveport Gospel Church was having an Easter supper for anyone who could come and listen to the preacher's sermon. The way we went on for 2 hours about sitting down to the Lord's great banquet and eating manna from heaven, we had had our hopes set a little bit on the high side. So when they ran us through a chow line for a bowl of watery onion soup and stale bread, it was a little bit of a disappointment. One weathered old hobo told me the preacher that if he wanted a preacher or more pilgrims on his way to heaven, they should have paved it with pork and beans instead of onion soup. That night we hopped the southbound train for St. Louis. We were both in a mood. Hungry and tired, I sat with my legs dangling on the boxcar, catching a breeze, when a tree branch caught me on the leg. It nearly flung me from the car, but I managed to stay on. Still, it gave me a good gash on the leg, and we had to find a doctor. Chunking up the dirt in Miss Sadie's yard, I could feel it grinding into the scar above my knee. The infection and fever had lasted 3 days. I didn't remember much other than the frightful dreams, and sweating clear through my nightgown and sheets, and Gideon's worried face beside my bed. When I finally came out of it, he looked at me like I was a different person from the little girl he'd known before. He kept saying I was growing up. I was becoming a young lady and other nonsense. I told him I hadn't seen the branch coming and it was just a scratch, but I guess he figured it would be easier traveling without me to get him in trouble. He thinks it's his fault, Miss Sadie said in her out-of-the-blue way. The hole nearly struck my feet. Why would he think that? I asked, not bothering to wonder how Miss Sadie could know the thoughts swimming in my head. To see Ned get on the train and leave manifest, and the people who leave him, Jinx thinks it's his fault. Oh, I said. Yeah, I suppose it was Jinx' fireworks scheme that got Ned the $25 he used to bribe the recruitment officer into letting him enlist underage. But Ned's the one who's anxious to leave. When there is suffering, we look for a reason. That reason is easiest found in oneself. Miss Sadie held up her hand, shielding herself from the stark light of day. I thought of Jinx saying goodbye to Ned at the train station, watching him until he was out of sight, and then watching some more, wondering why one had to leave while the other had to stay behind. For some reason, my face flushed, and it wasn't from the heat. So let me guess. Jinx skipped town. He ran away. Isn't that what people do when things get tough? They move on to the next town and leave all their troubles behind, and everyone they care about? My words came out in such a rush, I wasn't even sure if I was talking about Gideon or Jinx. You speak of a town of immigrants, people who already left everything behind, Sadie spat. Yes, there is plenty of blame to go around, and much of it ended up in manifest. Her words trailed off, and she fixed her stare ahead. Somehow, I felt we weren't talking about Gideon or Jinx anymore, but about Miss Sadie. It was in that moment when I saw the weight of age and pain weighing down on her. Every creak of the rocking chair sounded as if it was coming from her bones, and I had a revelation. As much as I needed to hear her story, she had a need to tell it. It was as if the story was the only balm that provided any comfort. So what happened next, after Ned left? Miss Sadie drew a breath. After Ned left, the troubles we all ran away from came and found us.